Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome for this webinar on investment strategies in times of COVID-19 and uncertainty surrounding on account of this pandemic. I've structured the presentation in three parts. One is COVID and how global economies and Indian economy is trying to, fight this COVID in terms of whatever stimulus and other activities the government is doing. Two is I'll just touch base on certain other parameters like earnings, flows, and some of the aspects which affect the market. And third, valuations and the sectors and stocks which we like in these kind of situation, and how to handle the market from a 1 year perspective and from a 3 year perspective. So without delaying, let me go to the presentation. So to start with, this graph, just shows you how taken from Bloomberg, showing in the first 62 days how this COVID-19 pattern has been in terms of escalation of cases, because the first 2 months are very crucial, and then based on Chinese whatever details we've gone, it normally flattens out. So maybe we've seen South Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, and some of the Asian markets which had got impacted in the first phase. The curve flattens out, but similar pattern is now being visible in some of the European countries, and US is maybe still some time to go once the curve flattens over there. But there is one small caveat over here, is that the post 62 days also we have been seeing some kind of escalation of cases. The next slide will talk about that. So the first topmost graph over there shows you the number of new cases which actually peaked out, then went down, and then slightly again it's on the uprise. Especially we're seeing some uptick again happening in the lower side, which is Spain. After going down again, the number of cases have gone up. Similar, Italy is also spiked a little bit. Germany is also a little bit again moving up, and we've also seen certain relapses happening in some of the South Asian countries also, like Singapore, South Korea, and China also is witnessing some kind of small cases of relapse over there. This is not a good sign. We'll have to just keep on monitoring how this new cases actually, monitor it on a weekly basis, how it flattens and starts going down. So once the cases actually start going down on the right hand side in a slope, then probably you could see that I think things will then slowly gradually come back to normalcy. But still we're living in uncharted territory because this is like we've never seen this kind of pandemic, so it's very difficult to predict the outcome of this kind of pandemic, because the vaccines take their own time to come. In between, governments have to actually just keep on trying to actually continue with the lockdown and take measures of distancing and so on and so forth, which is a little painful for the economy, but there's no choice. I think health comes first on the government agenda worldwide. The slide talks about what was kind of stimulus the various governments have been doing. So a couple of weeks back we heard G20 nations committing almost more than $5 trillion. If you add the activity of the central banks along with this fiscal stimulus, then the global stimulus goes up to almost $12 trillion, which is roughly 6% of global GDP. And particularly the biggest stimulus is coming from maybe UK, US, Japan, and Germany. So US is almost around US 2.2 trillion fiscal package, which is 10% of GDP. Japan is announced 20% of GDP. Germany is much more than that. And Fed, along with the governments, the central banks have also been very active, out of which the Fed is at the forefront, trying to inject as much liquidity as much as possible, do unlimited bond buying program to soothe the nerves and inject liquidity. So this is unprecedented. We haven't seen a proactive measure like this. During 2008, it was more of a reactive stance taken by the central bank later on. This time, because it is a health issue and because of lockdown, it's going to cause a lot of damage to businesses in terms of unemployment, demand going away, and so on and so forth. We're seeing a lot of action. In response to this, I think Indian government in the first phase had announced a fiscal package of 1.7 lakh crore, which is $22 billion, which works to only around 0.8% of GDP. When I go back to India, I'll touch base more on this aspect. Only one more highlight over here, China. Recent figures have come in. So till now, they have done around 2.5% of GDP by way of stimulus. And we're hearing there could be another $5 billion, 5% of GDP as a fresh stimulus likely to come very soon. But China is doing a unique thing. The stimulus is going to be more focused on infrastructure, technology, and so on and so forth. Unlike most of the other governments, which are trying to just sustain livelihood by funding the poor, funding businesses, and so on and so forth. This chart is the latest IMF projection predicting the global GDP numbers. So we're heading for a recession in this year. So as per the latest April IMF prediction, the world GDP is likely to shrink by around 3% this calendar year from 2.9% last year. This -3 just in January was around 3.3% positive. So from plus 3.3, we have gone to -3 in terms of IMF projection. And next year, they're expecting a smart pullback to 5.8. Their thesis and assumption is that activity should resume in the second half and then probably go to normalcy in the next calendar year. That's the assumptions and thesis they're working on as of now. The United States likely to see 6% shrinkage in GDP, Euro area 7.5% shrinkage. China is likely to do around 1.2% and India around 1.9. This is IMF projections for this year. And similarly, for both China and India, they're expecting 9 and 7.4% growth next year. There are some scenarios which IMF has built in. I'll just talk about that in the next slide. The left-hand side chart shows the quarterly GDP run rate, what IMF is looking at. So they're building in a small downtick and negative growth in Q1, and then a very sharp downtick in Q2, that is the June quarter, where they're expecting the advanced economies like Europe, US to most probably see a double-digit degrowth in the GDP, and maybe a single-digit degrowth in some of the emerging markets. The right hand, and then they're expecting a growth. So the dotted lines are the previous projections of IMF, and the blue and the red line are the revised projections. So that will give you an idea. So the blue line, in fact, if you see the advanced economies, even after in the end of next calendar year, they're expecting it to go back to zero, not into the growth path. This is one thing to just keep a watch on or note. The right hand chart shows some scenarios that if this COVID-19 extends a little longer in 2020, then I think so you will see a degrowth in the next calendar year also. That's what IMF is talking about. And if there is a fresh outbreak of or relapse of this somewhere in early next year, then I think so we are heading for a little longer downfall or a shrinkage in GDP likely to continue probably in next calendar year also. But this is just a thesis as of now. Let's wait and watch. I think so. Hopefully, if we go by what China has done in the last 1 month, it's resumed a lot of output factories, everything. Going by that, if the world also probably will take a little longer time than China because of a lot of different geography parameters, democracy, demographics, and all that. So probably we'll have to wait out. But it's going to be a little painful recovery, so to say. The chart actually shows, in relation to coronavirus or COVID-19, the governments have cut rates very sharply. We've seen almost, US rates going down from peak of 2% now to almost 0.25%. And in terms of, these are 10-year bond yields. And most of the European nations have now, a negative yield. So this is in response to whatever is happening. So the central banks have been quite active in cutting rates aggressively. Now this negative yields actually gives a little uh, uh, a warning kind of a thing. So globally, that's why gold as an asset class is going up because of unlimited printing of money and extreme lower yields. People try and actually look at gold as a safer haven where at least there is some kind of returns that people are witnessing as of now. Talking about this market fall in sync with the global, whatever shrinkage happened. This time's fall has been we've entered the bear market in the very short duration of just 16 days, unlike the 1929 Great Depression, where it took almost 35 days to go for the markets to go from the peak to below 20% from the peak. And in the 1987 Black Friday also it took around 38 days. So this is one of the steepest and the fastest fall into a bear market we've seen, and so maybe because the world is too close in terms of information communication and so on, and activity what's happening because of social media. So that's why the impact and the panic has set in quite fast as compared to the earlier times. Coming to India, I'll just touch base on some of the macro parameters and then go into the other factors. This is our Kotak Institutional Equities estimates. Recently, we have downgraded our FY21 GDP growth to 0.4% from 4.9% likely to be in fiscal year 2020. In this, if you see the breakup, I think agriculture is likely to still do well next year. This year it's likely to grow at 3.7, next year by around 2.9%. Industry will degrow next year. So this negative 3.6% will have an impact on the businesses and the revenue and earnings of a lot of companies. Out of the industry also, if you see the breakup, manufacturing, which is likely to be flattish this year, is likely to degrow by 6.6%. So this will give you some indication about the likely pattern of how companies are going to deliver in the next fiscal year FY. And services also, which is with the backbone, 60% of GDP comes from services, likely to sustain 6.9% growth in FY20, but then slow down to around 1.9% next year. Mainly it is to do with a lot of industries which are related to probably tourism, hotel trade, communication, real estate, and so on, so forth, similar kind of activities. This is yesterday's article of Financial Express where the Niti Aayog has pressed for a mega stimulus, which is they've asked for a 5% of GDP, which is like roughly working to 10 lakh crore, as compared to the first phase where the government has announced only 1.7 lakh crore. The advisors to the finance ministry, they've been saying that if we remove the central bank action, then the average global fiscal stimulus has ranged around 4 to 5%, and most probably I think we'll also go towards that path, because against 1.7 lakh crore, which is 0.8% of GDP, the RBI has taken enough measures to inject liquidity to the tune of roughly 5 lakh crore. So I think so. Maybe if we add up both 5 lakh crore of RBI and 1.7, then I think it goes to roughly 3% of GDP. So maybe if you have to go to the averages, then maybe another 2 to 2.5% of GDP could come by way of stimulus in the very near future. In what form, shape it comes, we'll have to just wait and see. We don't know exactly how it's going to be right now, but our anticipation is that the first phase was addressed towards the poor people in terms of providing them food, livelihood, and so on and so forth. The second phase should be addressing the concerns and cash flows of the small businesses, self-employed people, and the MSME, SME segment to a certain extent. Talking about liquidity, because whenever this concerns come, liquidity dries out and funding cost shoots up. So to address this, the RBI has been very proactive. I think we have almost more than 4 lakh crore liquidity available in the system. It's only that yesterday's RBI measures, talked about the same thing, that liquidity is going and is easily available for the larger players, larger NBFCs, it is still not going to the desired impacted segment, that's MSMEs, SMEs, microfinance companies, self-employed people, and all that. So now the government is, RBI is trying to see that more money goes into those deprived segments, to say. But nonetheless, I think so. Maybe this is to do with global rate cuts. We also had 75 bips of rate cut. We're expecting another 50 bips of rate cut going forward as the COVID-19 either prolongs or intensifies in the near future. The slide talks about government. I spent some time because there is a lot of question that even though we need to spend, does the government have the ability to spend actually? So this chart actually gives you a comparison of government debt to GDP, and if you see India, which is a red maroon graph over here, we are 67% of GDP, which is still manageable, and I think so we are somewhere at the average only. So I think in these kind of exceptional situations, we can bloat the debt to GDP for some time, and then again go to the FRBM kind of a path after things go back to normalcy. So this is one way of looking in terms of government debt to GDP, manageable. We can look for a stimulus in a bigger way. Second is, whether India's external debt position is inferior or superior as compared to other emerging markets, because the government RBI needs to keep a watch on the currency also, because we cannot allow a too sharp depreciation of the currency. So that is one more angle. So India, I think so, quite standouts in the emerging market pack. Our external debt to GDP is roughly around 20% only, so which is not big, I think so, as compared to other. So we can actually borrow from external sources also to fund the fiscal deficit. Since I was talking about the fiscal deficit, if you look at 2018 graph over a bar graph, the central fiscal deficit to GDP was 3.5%. State fiscal deficit to GDP was around 2.4, and 1.8 was government borrowings through various central entities like your Food Corporation and so NHAI and similar entities. So total deficit of the center state put together along with the PSU borrowings was around 7.7%, which we are anticipating it should go to around close to 9.5% this year, and it can go anywhere between 11 to 12% depending on the stimulus the government tries to do. We have seen a similar situation in 2010 during post the global financial crisis. We had allowed the fiscal deficit, central fiscal deficit, which was 2.5% in 2008, to go to 6.5%. So we have seen this kind of event, and then gradually it just keeps on going down. So this is so we have this room. We can go up to between 11 to 12% of combined fiscal deficit to GDP. That's the need of the hour also, I think. Talking about the interest rates, I think our repo rates have almost come down to 4.4%, and slowly and steadily, the deposit rates are also going down, and the lending rates actually somewhere have still not caught up in a meaningful way, because the lending rates are not come down to the desired extent. Hopefully, going forward, the transmission probably could happen. If you see the top right-hand side chart, the red line over there is the lending rate of banks. Okay, it is still probably almost close to around 9% or so, whereas the public sector banks, they have actually been following the RBI guidelines and cutting rates gradually. I think the interest rates also are a function of how the bond yields go. So your 10-year GSEC yields have also come up from around close to in 2018 it had peaked at about 8%, and now we are around 6.34%. So somewhere interest rates, I think so, the path is that it will go down, and we could see maybe the yields also slightly going down if more transmission happens. Coming to earnings yield and earnings of Nifty. I'll just explain this graph over here. Just to give you perspective, in October 2019, this year, that is the 2020 number, we were expecting Nifty earnings to be roughly around 550. That's actually come down as per our Kotak Institutional Equities to 512. Similarly, FY21, that time in October, we were building almost closer to 680, 690 rupees EPS. It's come down to 564 as of now. Okay, and the actual number is FY19, we had EPS, Nifty EPS of around 480. So the growth rate has kept on coming down of earnings. We are so this is the chart which keeps on telling you how the earnings have kept on getting downgraded consistently. We're expecting some more downgrades to happen most probably after this result season comes to an end. This chart gives you the figures. So just to give you a perspective, for FY20 we are expecting around 7% growth in earnings. This will be mainly on account of two reasons. One is disproportionate higher jump in earnings of banks, telecom, and the benefit of lower tax rates, which came in effect from end of September. So the benefit of lower corporate tax rate will help in terms of earnings growth. But in spite of the earnings, with the impact of growth and earnings cut, the EPS should have been far higher. But nonetheless, it is actually the benefit of tax rates have got washed out in because of the slowdown and the lockdown which we have seen. I think this 564 also, my reading is that this earnings number for the next 2 years are at big risk. We could see a steep cut in earnings likely post result season, and going forward as quarterly numbers come, because in the GDP estimates, if we're expecting 6.6% degrowth in manufacturing activity, then I think so we could, in worst case, we could see earnings of FY21 going to negative territory also. Talking about valuations, this is a MSCI World forward PE chart. Then it's a like-to-like forward PE chart since 2010. So we had seen a big re-rating of the global market in terms of valuation. From 10 P we went to almost 17 times. So 17 has been the peak for the MSCI World Index in terms of forward PE multiples. There was panic selling, it went down, and you can see a V-shaped recovery. This V-shaped recovery in the chart is on account of two things. One is global markets have pulled back 20-25% from the lows, and there has been now earnings cut also. So because of the earnings cut, the valuation starts inching up, and we are now again the value from valuation perspective, we are again we've come closer to the 17 mark, which means that one needs to be cautious, because from a valuation perspective, though markets fell, they've gone somewhere between the mid and the higher path, but as numbers keep on getting downgraded going forward, you'll see valuations inching up. So from valuation perspective, I think so we are again heading for some hurdle or resistance at higher levels in terms of global MSCI World Index. This chart, in this slide, we've got two charts. On the left hand side is the MSCI Emerging Market rolling 1 year forward P multiple. If you see here also, when the MSCI World Index valuations were getting capped at 17, the MSCI Emerging Market was getting capped at around 13 times. So 13 times its rolling phase come down to 10, but I think emerging markets will see the cut in earnings little with a lag from the developed markets. So I think we'll see earnings cut happening. So when the earnings cut happens, the valuations will again inch up to around 12 times or so in the next few months and quarters. Another reason for the valuations actually remaining on the lower end is because China accounts for almost 33% weight in the MSCI emerging markets, and somewhere Chinese markets has been trading at a very lower end as compared to other emerging markets. And the right hand chart shows the premium of MSCI India in terms of P over that of MSCI emerging markets. We plot this just to see how, as compared to other emerging markets, whether India is overvalued, undervalued. So right now it has come closer to the lower end of the valuation premium band. So if historically We bottomed out at India has bottomed out at 20% premium over emerging markets. It goes up to almost 60%, and now again we are closer to. So to summarize is that maybe India is a little better off in terms of earnings as compared to other emerging markets in terms of earnings and valuation. Coming to Nifty, this chart actually gives you 1 year rolling forward PE chart of Nifty, 2011 to 2013. Somewhere it bottomed out between 12-13 times. Just to give you a perspective, in between 2011 and 2013, the average bond yields, India's 10-year GSEC bond yield used to be around 8.5%. So so if you divide 100 by 8.5, the bond P used to be at 11 times only. That's the reason why equity P could not go to 14, above 15 to 18 times. But then as gradually bond yields have gone down, the bond P has also gone up. To that extent, we had a sustained market trading between 70 to 18 times between 2017 and 2019, mid till maybe mid 19, you can say. That's how. But now it's come down. It's come down to around 13 times, and the 10-year average has been around 15.6 times. So we're trading below. But a caveat over here is that this forward P is a function of earnings, and if you have a 10% cut in earnings, then this 14 P becomes 15.5 times. If you have a 15% cut in earnings forecast, then it goes to 16 times. So this valuation chart will keep on going up in the next couple of weeks and months as the earnings season unfolds, and earnings get cut, forward earnings get cut, and the PEs will look a little expensive as compared to what we are seeing right now. Unlike PEs can be distortive. So what happens if earnings shift 20% lower, then the entire goalpost changes. So what could be more secular and steady in terms of long-term, where you can actually look at trailing number, is this trailing price to book, because unlike earnings, the book value doesn't be so volatile, because even though in a year, if earnings of a company or index go down 20%, still the book value will go up, because the formula book value is basically net worth divided by number of shares, and below the earnings after paying dividends and other payouts, obviously everything gets added to the book value. So if a trailing price to book gives you a better perspective of a bottoming of market. So if you look at this chart, in 2008 and 2012, earlier the trailing price to book has gone slightly below 2 times, and recently at 7,500 it had gone to that low of around between 1.8 1.9 times price to book. This is trailing price to book, and the book value will accrete or grow at least in single digit for the next 2 to 3 years, in spite of a degrowth in earnings. So what will happen is, from a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year perspective, you need to bring this price to book value by around, say, between 5 to 10% on a year-on-year basis. So from a price to book value on a long-term perspective, I think so. At low levels, market seems to be close to the bottom, and maybe long-term investors then can take advantage of any fall from here on to accumulate stocks from a 2 to 3 year perspective. This chart is actually an inverse of the bond yield and the earnings yield, or earnings yield. So what happens? What I've done is, over here, I've divided 100 by the 10-year GSEC yield of 6.34. We get the bond PE, which is roughly around 15.2 to 15.3 right now, and similarly is the equity forward PE, which is at around roughly 14 times. So this is after a long time we have seen that the equity P is trading, which is Nifty forward P, is trading below the bond P. If I go by the last 12-13 years average, the equity P has traded at a premium of around 250 bips over that of the bond PV. So if you look at the red line and the blue line, whenever they converge, then you have a dispersion again, and again the red goes up, and the blue goes down. So whenever they converge, you have then again a phase when there is expansion of equity as compared to the bond PE multiple. So another way to look at it is if the bond P is at around 15, 16 times, we cannot expect equities to trade at 12, 13 times for a long time. It has to actually at least be at par with the bond P or above that, because the 10-year average equity premium has been 250 bips. So based on this, I think equity markets, unlike the 2011 to 2013 phase, should trade at least around 15 times and above, and it should not go below 15 times. That's what our assessment is as of now. So in worst case, actually on a forward basis, maybe after a period of time, I think this 14, 15 will become the floor for the market in terms of forward PE multiples. This is a little outdated chart, but I just wanted to show you the linkage between bottoming of market and the VIX index. So in this, the yellow is the VIX index, NSE VIX index, and the white line is the Nifty. So in 2008, immediately after the announcement that Lehman is gone burst, you had a big spike in the VIX index. The NSE VIX index has shot up to above 70. In fact, from a weekly chart, so within the week it had gone to almost 80, 85, and that was the bottom of the market. But then this happened in November 2008. But the equity market then went into side phase for 6 months, and March onwards, then the Nifty started going up. The white line started going up only after March onwards. And then the yellow line, which had spiked, immediately came down, and then slowly started drifting down. So, and then if you look at it, for last many years, it has been trading at around, on average, 15% has been the VIX index. Recently, when the Nifty hit lower circuit of 7,500, again the VIX index had gone to 85. On the weekly basis, it was again closer to the peak. So somewhere at 7,500 mark shows that probably it could be the bottom for the market, or it will be somewhere closer to the bottom for the market going forward. And as in the course of the year, the VIX index probably will keep on slowly drifting downwards. But same like 2008, we are also heading for a recession, and markets could be in bear phase for a little longer time. So you will trade in the range. I'll come back to the range also in the next slide when I'm talking about it. So just to summarize, on the outlook of the market, based on whatever we have seen, macros, global earnings, valuation. One thing I forgot to touch is flows. In India, the flows were very strong. Between April to February, we had almost around close to $10 billion FII money coming in. In 1 month, March, FII outflow was around $7.8 billion. So whatever came in 11 months got wiped off in a month in March. March was a month where the Nifty fell around 23%. The crude fell by almost around 50-60%. So this 1 month of March has distorted the entire equation in terms of returns, in terms of flows and everything. I think right now we see some reversal pattern in FII flows, but it's a little volatile. We need consistent at least 2-3 weeks of positive FII flows for us to say that the tide is turned and markets could resume and go on the upside trajectory. That we have still not seen it. So coming back to outlook, I think fear of global recession, is something which had caused the panic selling, which is now receding. VIX index is also receding. So these two things show that any future fall will be much more slope will be a little slower and much more gradual than what we saw in the last 1 month, in the month of March. Government, central banks, regulators have been using unconventional tools to manage the situation to the best extent. But one small observation over here, what has happened in 2008 and now is that 2008 activity was normal. It was a financial crisis, and later on the tools used by central banks and government worked, and you had a recovery. Right now we are facing a health issue, and whatever stimulus and liquidity injection which is happening by banks and governments, it's actually going into survival of mankind, human lives, and survival of businesses. So I think it will not have that desired outcome as what we saw in 2008-9. because this money is not going into productive assets, it is not going into capital expenditure, it's not going to be building infrastructure and so on and so forth. So I think so. What are money that is being spent by governments and central banks, the multiplier effect will be very, very low this time, because it's just going to go to fill up the needs of day-to-day activity of people, and just to help businesses survive and sustain. Demand is going to take a little longer time to recover. So the impact of fiscal stimulus, we feel it is high, but it's not going to be big at this time. Just keep in mind this fact. Brent crude falling is a good stimulus for India, because every $10 fall in crude prices helps our current account deficit to go up by around $15 billion. So I think so maybe our in-house estimate is that crude should average around $35 for this fiscal year, and for next fiscal year it is $45. So I think if we're talking of average 35, I think we should get a benefit around 20 to 30 dollars per barrel. And suppose 25-30 billion barrel means we could get a quasi savings of around anywhere between say 40 to 45 billion dollars kind of a amount we can save. This saving can be then spread across three. One is government will take a part of it. Some probably, as and when the demand activity picks up, then benefit could pass on to the consumers also. Nifty earnings CAGR, we were talking of 14% earlier. Now I think it's a big risk. We could see either a single digit or a flattish kind of a number going forward. We'll have to just wait out and watch this number as the earnings season goes, and every next few months we just keep on monitoring it. Valuations look reasonable, attractive, but again, we don't know how much earnings are going to get it, and to that extent, the valuations then will inch up and go up. On certain other parameters like market cap to GDP, at the low of 7,500, the market cap to GDP had gone down to 50%, and historically it is bottomed out at 40%. So we were just around closer to that mark. Again, I think we are again at about 60% to the GDP. The bond PE, equity PE tool looks attractive. Price to book also market looks attractive. So for long-term investors, maybe any fall from here could be a good level to invest over there. Our assessment is that valuation gap between large cap, mid caps is narrowed, so it doesn't make sense to or maybe catch or go behind a lot of mid caps as of now. Focus on the large caps, because the large caps have fallen too fast too soon between March and now. So maybe and the first phase of recovery will likely happen in large caps, unlike mid and small caps will take a long time to recover, because the first phase of money flow will also come from FIIs because of the unlimited quantitative easing done by Fed and the ECB, and that money is not going to go into mid and small caps. It will basically go into Nifty or passive investments in ETFs or among the top 100 companies. Again, focus again comes back to quality companies only, because a lot of leveraged companies or companies with not good background or with cyclical nature will have a lot of issues to fight this kind of slowdown. We've never seen such lockdown for decades. So I think this is one thing. Stay focused on strong balance sheet companies, high quality management companies. Wherever you feel that earnings could fall less as compared to the broader market, maybe focus on that. And valuations should be reasonable, maybe not too cheap. Too cheap or value could be a trap. Too expensive probably could see a big derating. What we saw in names like Bajaj Finance, which was trading at 8 times, is now come down to 3.5 times. So there could be a threat of derating in a lot of the high valued companies. So yes, I think so. That's just to summarize the outlook. I'm just giving a perspective. The first bracket is keep watch that we are heading for recession this year. This calendar year could be washout, and next calendar year could be a recovery. Okay, we most of the markets, especially the emerging markets, will remain in the bear phase for quite some time. So for us, 10,000 becomes very crucial. And also keep in mind that earnings could get hit disproportionately beyond expectation. So to that extent, PEs can be misleading. So one needs to be very conservative while looking at valuations of companies. So these are the thing. For investors for traders and for people who are looking from a less than 1 year perspective, I think 10,000 will be very crucial from both on the valuation and technical perspective, because 10,000 was the cutoff for a bear phase for India from 12,430. And also from a technical perspective, it broke the 200 weekly moving average somewhere around 10,300. Gradually, that 200 weekly moving average will drift down to around 10,000 or so. Okay. Broad range for markets, 7,000 to 10,000 something we are looking at. And any bull market can only take shape if Nifty decisively goes about 10,000, stays there, and maybe to a bigger, people are a little more conservative. At 10,500 could be a better mark to see that we are getting into bull phase. Our thesis is that as we go closer to 10,000, be conservative, create cash, and if Nifty goes to again to the recent low of 7,500 or it's trying to break that, then be more aggressive, invest aggressively that line. For long-term investors, I think it will be difficult to time the market. So now, whenever markets keep on drifting down, maybe during in post-result season, it will be good buying opportunity to add stocks on a consistent basis. Okay, better emerging opportunities could emerge post-result season or during the result season. So have some patience. We saw a steep fall of almost around 5,000 points, and then we come closer to the mid part. That's around 10,000. So the pullback has been V-shaped because the fall was vertical. So be patient and look at better opportunities at lower levels. You could either do a SIP or STP style of investments and prefer mega caps only as of now for investment. Just to summarize about which segments look quite good, I think corporate banks are better off than the PSU banks and some of the other names. We like Axis Bank, ICICI Bank. Last 2 days the stocks have rallied, so maybe this we had made this in the last 1 week. So but yeah, I think as and when Axis Bank, ICICI Bank fall in the next phase, you can look at buying them. NBFCs, we are very selective, only focus on the larger names, maybe HDFC, Bajaj Finserv, Cholamandalam. That probably you can look at now in declines, to add them. Insurance is less impacted, especially life insurance companies. So you can look at HDFC Life, CAC Life, or SBI Life. But I think we should wait. You can look at buying them in fall. Pharma could be a structural story going forward. You have a hype has got created in pharma sector in the last 2 weeks. I think the Q4 results could disappoint and you could get better entry levels in pharma. But globally, post this COVID, what will happen is worldwide governments will increase their healthcare budgets and healthcare spending in a meaningful way to fight any such pandemics in future. Also this current one also. So I think gradually you will see demand for healthcare, medicines and everything going up in futures, and the fact that now Indian plants are getting a little or probably you can anticipate faster approvals of some of the plants which are under FDA scanner. All this probably could go well. So at declines you can look at a Cipla, Lupin, Sun Pharma. On the consumer space, day-to-day activity, items, products, demand is still continuing. So Colgate, ITC is something which you like. Most of the other bigger names, Lever, Nestle and Dabur, they're still trading at expensive valuation. So we are preferring companies which are reasonably valued in context to the ROEs and the growth prospects companies have. Gas business could also be a little more less cyclical because right now it's impacted, but as and when the activity resumes again, this is day-to-day requirement of industries and like pipe natural gas demand will continue. Once activity CNG demand will also come back, and BPCL I think so we've added because oil marketing companies could gain a lot on account of the sharp fall in crude prices. So their marketing margins could offset any impact on the refining margins, and net they will be a big gainer. We like this oil and gas space. And lastly, telecom. I think all the companies are running at 100% utilization right now. There is no impact of slowdown or lockdown on telecom companies. So best way to place Bharti Airtel and Reliance Industries because of Geo factor. And I think the retail side of retail Reliance will also do well. And there is opportunity to unlock value in these companies going forward. So I think this is something which you can look for. Individual, there are some larger mid caps we like, very selective. So we've named Escorts because of the agriculture side, Federal Bank because it's trading at very dirt cheap valuation. These companies are a combination of cheap valuations, but slightly better prospects of growth going forward, and also the ability to do better as compared to some of the other mid caps. So we like this the names: KC International, Muthoot Finance, Apollo Hospitals, Jubilant Foodworks, SRF, Max Financial. These are some of the other names we like. So that's it on the presentation. I'll just take the Q&A side. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll just run down with the questions which have come in from our clients and viewers, and I'll take them to the best of my ability, whatever I can cover. If there are certain company-specific questions, I'll address that, and along with the sector, I'll try and give views on some other companies also in the same sector. There are some questions on what about small caps. So a view on small caps is I think so we would like to avoid small caps because they most of the small caps are actually are driven by investments by local investors, HNIs, PMS, small cap funds, and so on and so forth. I think the ability and the availability of money could be a little problem to move up this, and small caps are the last ones to rally in a bull phase. So our assessment is that probably wait for in the next fall if the market gives you opportunity to look at the mega caps because the first phase of recovery will be there. So for example, again, if you see a big rally, you can make a decent amount of returns in large caps and again have the ability to go into small cap, mid caps in the second phase. Once Nifty decisively goes about 10,000 in the next few months or quarters after what we're seeing right now. Questions on real estate, plays right now, how that sector is doing. I think maybe real estate could get impacted. In fact, recent interview of Deepak Parekh has been very categorically saying that he's expecting a 20% fall in real estate prices. And another observation, which is to do not only with real estate but with discretionary spending, is that the discretionary spending pattern has got distorted. It will take a long time for discretionary spending to again come back into play. Why? Because as per the latest CMI, the unemployment level is gone from 7% to 23%. So we'll have a lot of job losses because of the lockdown. A lot of laborers have migrated back. It will take time for them to come back. People will be in cash conservation mode for some time because of cut in salaries and threat of jobs and so on and so forth. So what will happen is a lot of the discretionary spending items may not be on the radar of a lot of people. And anyways, in India, the population which invests in equities is very less. So I think consumer durables, maybe automobiles, real estate, then some of the consumer discretionary spending, like where you spend on luxury items and so on and so forth. One should avoid those kind of companies. Maybe a few of them are still trading at rich valuations also. And real estate also, I think, will go through a lot of pain, so one can avoid and maybe look at it in second phase or third phase of investments that you want to do. Question on bank Nifty or bank performance going forward. How do you see that? Our take is that if GDP growth is going to go down, I think so. Say in the last in that 2000 to 2010 phase, the multiplier of credit offtake was around 1.4 times of GDP. That was the phase when GDP credit offtake used to be in double digit. 2010 and especially 2000, maybe 2012, 13 to 2019, 20, that multiplier has gone down to 0.8, 0.9, which means that GDP was growing at 6, 7, the credit offtake was around the same 6, 7% mark. And if GDP is going to go down to maybe 0, 1%, then I think so credit offtake is going to get impacted. So I think banks, one needs to be very selective. I think the universe of banks which one can look at is shrunk a lot. So just be focused on the top 4-5 names in the banking sector to play with, which have little better CASA, a better mix of retail loan, and a lesser proportion of unsecured loans. That's the way I'm looking at it. Then there are questions on what do you feel about the results season, IT company results which have come up, and so on and so forth. I think on the IT sector, we are still not very positive because what's happened is, fresh capex will take a backseat as far as spending by companies is concerned. I think most of the IT companies who do offshoring, they are underutilized right now. That's one thing. Fresh budgets have got delayed or postponed. So, traveling is not happening. So I think the demand and a lot of industries which give businesses to service industries and manufacturing which give business to IT companies, there also we see a lot of slowdown. So the only savior or the tailwind for IT companies is the currency. But beyond that, I think we don't see material earnings growth in IT companies. So we would not. IT is little less preferred as of now. What is more preferred right now is probably pharma at low levels, or gas companies, insurance companies, or probably certain select banks, NBFCs. You can look at lower levels. That's all. Any targets for the Bajaj twins? I think maybe Bajaj Finance is showing a lot of weakness. When the market hit low of 7,500, stock had come down to the current price of around 2,200. Then you've seen from those levels, ICICI Bank moving from 265 to 375 now. Axis Bank going up 45% from the lows. So there is a weakness in both the twins of Bajaj Finserv and Bajaj Finance. So probably, I think if someone is looking at long-term perspective also, I would suggest wait and spread across a buying in Bajaj Finance and Bajaj Finserv maybe in the next, whenever there's a down cycle, down phase of market. I think that could be a better way to deploy money because you could see a new low in both Bajaj Finserv and Bajaj Finance going forward. A question on outsourcing and how do you see the specialty chemical industry? I think we are quite positive on the specialty chemical businesses because India anyways was doing pretty well on the specialty chemical exports. I think India hardly does around I think few $1 billion of exports of specialty chemical as compared to some 24-25 $billion of specialty chemical exports which China does. So if there is a feeling that some of the outsourcing will move out post COVID settles from China to other countries, India has got a good opportunity to grab that piece of outsourcing of specialty chemicals. So there are a lot of each specialty chemical has a different business model. One needs to just assess that which segments of specialty chemicals will see outsourcing. So names like SRF or probably Vinati Organics or Aarti Industries or Atul somewhere but the top 4-5 companies only will have that ability to scale up, and one should just focus on those names going. Question on a lot of questions coming on SBI cards. I think post listing. So the way to look, I think because we were lead managers, we're not allowed to talk on SBI cards or SBI cards as of now. So that's our constraint. So sorry for that. Maybe once that restriction silent period is over, maybe we can then come. We could have that stock. Maybe we can talk about it later on. A lot of questions are actually, one should buy pharma companies at these levels. because outlook is good. And I think in pharma, what is happening is, see, right now, few certain drugs have got some potential, but those maybe just hardly few percentage of the overall revenue. Ultimately, one needs to have a holistic approach of the entire basket of pharma companies, how they're going to do going forward. So I would suggest, yes, the outlook is very good. The pharma sector could outperform meaningfully in the next 1 to 2 years to the broader market. One should definitely look at big generic pharma companies in declines, because they'll have dual benefit of better business and the currency factor also working in their favor. We don't track Cadila, so I cannot comment on that. But yes, whenever a Sun, Lupin, Cipla, and Laurus Labs and so on and so forth names go down, you can look at accumulating pharma companies, because at one time, a couple of years back, the share of pharma in the index was almost 78%. Recently, at the lows, it was less than 2%. So I think there is a scope to go somewhere midway in terms of weightages of pharma in the overall index also, that way. Question on some of the small finance banks like AU and others. I think the microfinance and the small finance business has got, or probably will get impacted the maximum, because they have been lending to the lower end of the population, and the chances of defaults is going to be very, very high on in those segments. So I think maybe it's time to look at the top 4 or 5 banks as of now, because the balance sheets and the ability to withstand shocks is very high. All of them have very good mix of agriculture, corporate, retail, lending, and with good CASA and reach. So I think we would, as of now, probably stick with the larger names only. Maybe you can look at some of the smaller banks later on, as and when there is opportunity coming in the second phase. Maybe you can just skip the first phase. Question on Maruti. What about Maruti and some of the other automobile companies? I think automobiles, what we're seeing in China as of now, post resuming to normalcy, the automobile industry has seen a huge demand. Like Tesla has got some 12,000 bookings in the month of March itself, or March, and probably so. There could be a phase where probably people will, a lot of people who used to commute public transport or to using sharing, travel modes like Ola, Uber. Maybe some portion of the population might, which is salaried class or the service segment, could look at actually having their own car. So I would not write off. Maybe yes, one can look at Maruti in a fall, because what is happening is some of the automobile companies and two-wheelers will get hit big in the next last quarter, this quarter, and maybe one more quarter. So because a shutdown means a huge impact on these kind of companies. So the operating delta could be very negative. So earnings could take a big hit. I think one should just wait for this March quarter results, hear out what the management is saying, and then assess that what could be the realistic earnings per share of companies, and then apply your benchmark of valuation. I would probably, maybe for two-wheeler companies, between 10-15 times could be a good benchmark on PE multiples. For companies like Maruti, maybe 18-20 times could be a good benchmark, and then you can look at companies accordingly. But I would still avoid pharma automobiles for some time. Let the result season go, and then take a call on, because in auto there is one more angle, is that the shift from BS4 to BS6, which will lead to a lot of jump in the prices of automobiles, which will also be a negative factor for them. So I think we can go slow on automobile names, and it could be on the lower end of your preference as far as other sectors are concerned. So view on oil companies like GAIL, ONGC, Indian Oil. So when I talked about BPCL, I covered that the oil marketing companies can do very well because of the lower crude prices. Their marketing margins are going to shoot up. and they'll have the ability to procure raw crude at a very low price. So earlier, Saudi Aramco used to give discounts of $2. I think in between it has gone to $10. So there'll be a big discount on crude. This is coming from Middle East, and India is one of the largest outsourcers of Middle East crude. So the costing will be very attractive, and even though there is a minor cut in the realization in terms of lower petrol and diesel prices, there could be a big delta in profitability coming from marketing margins. So I think so. We like BPCL, HPCL, IOC. We would not be so keen on ONGC, Oil India, because the upstream companies will get impacted because of lower realizations. I think so. And GAIL looks good because of the infrastructure, and valuations are very, very cheap, and demand for again gas will come back once activity resumes or come back to normalcy in a staged manner. I think you can look at maybe GAIL also looks quite attractive to us. Question on Tata Motors, very difficult. I think so. I'm not in a situation to gauge the impact on some of the companies which are internationally exposed. So I think maybe one should, I'm making a generic statement, one should avoid companies who have got a larger share of revenues coming from global operations. So maybe names like Motherson Sumi, Tata Motors, maybe they can do phenomenally well in the next 2 to 3 years, but at least for the next 6 months, 1 year, visibility is very poor because a lot of these nations like US, Europe is going to get impacted in a much more meaningful way because the number of cases over there are one of the highest, and the casualties is the heaviest over there. We don't know how the demand for JLR and in Europe and US is going to be. So I think companies with broader exposure in the global markets can be avoided. Look at simple businesses where you can understand the impact. Domestic businesses, for a Bata, for example, this is the impact, something like that. Or for Jubilant Foodworks, that Domino's Pizza will not sell under lockdown. Maybe once 30%, 50%, 100% resumption happens, this is the path, and it can go back to normalcy. And you have a benchmark of 2018-19 when activity was peak, how the company operated. Maybe you can replicate that and see in FY22 how it will be, and then based on FY22 valuation, you can look at stocks. I think it will be very futile to look at FY21 as a benchmark, where FY21 numbers are going to get distorted and hit in a big way. So I think any company which one should look at 22 number, because anyways 1 year down the line everyone's going to benchmark FY22 number only. So that's the path and way I'm talking about looking at it. Question on ACC, Ultratech. I think cement, I'm still on the back foot right now. As a house, we don't have great upsides in many of the cement companies because some of the big names in cement were already trading at rich and expensive valuation. There has been a derating, but I think somewhere the government will also be constrained to spend heavily going forward, because what is happening in these kind of things right now, the entire stimulus will be going into probably providing cash to the poor and liquidity to the business segment, so on and so forth. So maybe the focus on infrastructure may take a backseat, and it will be on the sideways for some time, except for rural infrastructure. So given this background, maybe I'm not very sure the cement demand may come back in a big way. Anyways, because real estate also, our view is not very great. So keeping these things in mind, I think so maybe one can still try and avoid cement and look at some of the businesses which are getting least impacted and where demand is little less distorted. So probably look at some of the select consumer names, or look at select utilities or gas companies or insurance companies, or probably some of the other businesses where probably your comfort is really higher. Apart from that, what's the view on housing finance companies like LIC Housing Finance, HDFC Limited? See, I think HDFC Limited could stand out because we have gone through the earlier study in 2008-9 also. HDFC had seen the least impact on earnings because of its conservative nature. For some of the larger NBFCs, the cost of borrowing is also gone down substantially. Today, the CDCP rates have fallen again, way below the 2017-18 levels also. So some of the larger NBFCs like HDFC or probably Bajaj Finance could withstand this shock in a meaningful way because of the lower cost of borrowing, and they'll be able to at least try and maintain NIMs to the best extent possible. So I think maybe and housing finance is much more secured lending as compared to some of the other unsecured lending. And HDFC has recently raised money by selling stake in Bandhan Bank and raising money. So I think HDFC looks the best in the NBFC pack to me, probably. So I think one can look at Bajaj Finserv, HDFC, Chola as a great play in the NBFC space. We own HDFC Bank. I would probably know HDFC Bank looks very good in terms of valuation, but going by the last 1 year, the way IndusInd Bank has played out, just imagine what image we had 1 year back of IndusInd Bank and how the valuations have taken a knock. So I think the way to play HDFC Bank is just wait out. Let's wait and see who the new person is who's going to head HDFC Bank. Wait for 1 or 2 quarters post his taking charge and then take a call. I think so. So maybe HDFC Bank, though is one of the best banks, just because of the change of guard, I think so one can wait for some time and then take a call on HDFC Bank. That could also be a good thing that way. View on L&T and IRB, and I think capital goods I've not talked about. I just summarize the entire sector to give you a perspective on all the capital good companies. So I think this capital good companies have also will take a huge knock on their order book because last couple of months orders were not coming in. They had healthy order books previously. Maybe as and when the activity comes back, all the old orders might get executed, but there could be order cancellations also going forward. So what could happen is, I think so, lack of fresh visibility could impact the outlook for a lot of this capital good companies. So maybe L&T has fallen a lot. It can pull back along with the market, but I think so one can still try and avoid cap good companies as of now until you have a 1 year, 2 year down the line situation when the economy is again from 0% GDP growth is gone back to 6-7% GDP growth. And you have a visibility that is going to sustain for the next 1 to 3 years, and next year same time if there is a place that we don't see any relapse of COVID-19, because there is a threat of relapse in the next winter season because this is a new kind of virus. We've never dealt with this kind of virus again. So I think maybe a year down the line, you can then have a look at cap good companies. I would probably try and actually maybe the valuations are attractive, try and avoid maybe names like cap goods, L&T, ABB, Thermax and IRBs and those kind of companies. IRCT, a lot of questions are coming, but we don't have a view on IRCT. Sorry, because we don't track this company and it's a new listing, so we don't have a handle on it also. So I'm refraining from giving any view on IRCT as of now. PNB Housing, I think so. We would still like to be with the HDFC, best to do because some of the smaller housing finance companies will find it difficult to manage this phase of when there could be rising NPAs and demand is not happening in a meaningful way. So sourcing cost of borrowing will also be a little higher for a lot of the second tier, third tier companies in housing finance over there. View on Tata Steel, Vedanta. I think metal companies, typically they are volatile. They go up too fast. They fall also too soon. I think at this juncture, maybe one can look at little diversified nature. I think maybe demand for infrastructure will take some time because I think next 1 year, all the government's focus will be more on the healthcare part. Also, that healthcare expenditure will take away some of the pie of a lot of other spending of governments. So I think metals also is one space I would like to avoid, because you don't know to what extent earnings can get hit. It will be too wide a guess to make on the earnings of metal companies. Uh, so I think so, but yeah, I think so. You can maybe look at some names like Vedanta, which have got very good high dividend yield and much more diversified nature of a profile of business, can be looked at that way. A different question, one should look at ROC or ROE of companies for investing in future. I think so. See, what has happened, I'll give you a little, I'll just take a step back. In 2004 to 2007, we had a phase when the manufacturing and infrastructure activity was very robust. Nifty had ROE of more than 20 to 23%, and that time the valuations are also shot up. Right now, the ROE of Nifty is come down to 12-13%, and it will remain like this for some time. So this is one benchmark to look at. I think so, but maybe I would try and maybe avoid companies which have got very high debt. So probably what could happen is, though interest rates are coming down, and only companies which have got visibility of business will be able to sustain the cost of debt. Otherwise, borrowings hit a lot when business is not there, and the recovery of this is going to be a little slow and painful. It's not that immediately you switch on your factories and you move from 20% utilization to 80%. I think so it's not going to be like that. It's going to be slow and gradual, and to that extent, leveraged companies could get impacted. My sense is, look at our companies having ROEs above 15%, ROCE above 15%, because in India today the weighted average cost of capital itself is around 12-13% for the if you leave apart the top quality companies. So my sense, to justify any value addition, I think we need to have at least bare minimum 15% threshold for both ROC, ROEs for a value accretion to both the company and to the shareholders. View on IPCA, Glenmark, I think we don't cover both these companies, so I'm a little constrained in answering on that part. View on PSUs, the Bharat Electronics, BEML, Coal India, and so on and so forth. I think BEL and BEML probably one can look at as a tactical play from a divestment perspective, I think, going forward. Apart from that, I think some names like ONGC, Coal India could still remain a value trap, because they've not been exhibiting any great earnings growth, and valuations remain low. They are all good dividend plays. But then I think so when markets fall 30-40%, I think so one should not be chasing dividend yield companies. They should be trying to look at capital appreciation. So I think in the next phase also one could probably, my sense is, avoid dividend yield companies, because you don't know, there could be value traps, and there could be further derating in them. So it's best to do is, I think so, and plus maybe because of the huge fiscal deficit, and I don't know how the timelines of divestments are going to play out in the next fiscal year also, or sorry, this fiscal year, I'm so sorry, FY21. So difficult call. But I think you can look at certain strong candidates where the government has already announced strategic divestment, like BPCL, Concor, BEML kind of companies could be looked at in the PSU pack over there. View on some of the battered down names like SBI, I think still looks good. Asked on SBI looks good because I think the market cap today has gone down to almost 1,70,000 crore, and if I'm adding the market cap of the listed subsidiaries itself, I think so is far higher. Even if I'm taking the average holding of SBI and doing, I think so there's hardly any value attributed to the main company, and the main company now traded, I think, sub one-time price to book in a big way. So I think you can look at probably SBI looks quite good, but in SBI one needs to keep in mind that next couple of quarters could be painful because of the hit in NPAs and businesses. So there could be a slow process. It might not give you immediate return, but I think you can wait. If you've got 3-year view, 2 to 3 year view, then SBI looks quite good at this levels. easily it can again go back to 300, 350 levels over there that way. I think in keeping the time constraint, maybe I'll take another three questions more, and then maybe we can actually I'll take a pause over there. Uh, View on some of the names like Biocon, biosimilar businesses. Uh, I think Biocon, as a house, we have a sell rating. The stock has done pretty well, and the biosimilar could have a good future going forward also. Maybe I think our view is that one can look at lower levels to look at companies like Biocon. View on healthcare still is very positive. So someone had asked about healthcare also. So we're extremely bullish on healthcare companies like Apollo Hospital, Narayana, Rudalaya, Metropolis, and so because these businesses in the last 18-20 quarters, they've still grown at 15% when the other industries were suffering, and most of them are still in nascent state. The overall size of the industry is too small, and plus I think after this COVID-19 episode, my sense is if healthcare budgets are going to go up and people would be more proactive in terms of doing the health checks and everything, I think the industry looks very good. Apollo Hospital is a top pick over there, followed by maybe Narayana Rudalaya, and then you can look at Aster DM Healthcare and Metropolis over there. They are looking quite attractive and very good businesses to own from long term perspective. View on HDFC Life and Prudential ICICI Life and life insurance. See, I think life insurance is a good business. In the next 5 years, could do very well. In fact, I was reading a lot of articles. Online insurance, policies have gone up because for online insurance, the business could continue in these kind of lockdowns also because most of the laboratory chains are working. If you fill up the form online and then just go and do a medical and come back, I think so. Then that piece is still doing well, and my assessment is the next 3 years down the line, you'll see one or two good insurance names in the Nifty also, and they have a huge good future. So we're extremely bullish. But only thing is maybe we can wait for a little better entry level, so one can just keep on accumulating SBI Life or Prudential ICICI Life or HDFC Life in declines. And for any person with very high risk, high return appetite, they can look at Max also because it's available at a very low valuation as compared to the peers over there. That's how. I think I've got a lot of other questions also. So maybe what we can do is wherever people have given their email IDs, to the best of our ability, we'll try and actually revert back if I've missed certain aspects of either sectoral exposure or company exposure. We'll try and actually respond back by way of an email. So that's that we can do. So thank you very much. I appreciate your coming on this webinar, and hopefully we would like to keep this kind of engagements in future also. Thank you for spending time on a Saturday, and have a great day. Thank you, everyone.